My name is David Thomas, and I'm the Executive Director of Open Arms Incorporated, doing business as Brian's House in Dallas, Texas. As Executive Director, of course, I'm responsible for the operation of the organization. It's an agency that focuses on children, younger children, aged 0 to 5 years old primarily, who have children with special health needs. And I was president of the ACYCP from 1997 until 2005, I believe, for 7 years total. During the time that I was president, we faced a number of challenges. When I became president, NACWA, as it was known, National Organization of Child Care Workers Association, was at a crisis because membership had been declining. The state associations had been reduced from a dozen to a few, and there was serious consideration about whether the organization could continue. In fact, the first meeting I attended as a new representative from Texas, they were seriously entertaining a proposal to go out of business. And there was a group of us who argued for the need for a national organization to represent child and youth care workers, who really were opposed to that. And so I ended up being elected president because I was part of that group. From the beginning of my presidency, it became apparent that we needed to make major changes in the mission of the organization, the name, the identity of the organization, the organizational structure, and really needed to focus on our new mission, whatever that was going to be, how we were going to formulate, how we were going to represent child and youth care workers. So it was a time of great change. The next year I proposed a number of changes, and there was a group of us that worked very hard to change the identity as well as the name of the organization from NACWA to the Association for Child and Youth Care Practice. A lot of thought was given to that, a lot of debate, it was pretty contentious at moments about changing that identity away from being an organization of state associations to being an organization of entities, individuals, and organizations that were interested in promoting the field of child and youth care. But we prevailed, and we had a strong majority coming out of that next annual meeting. We had endorsed an agenda of establishing a national certification for child and youth care workers, which had never been done before. In fact, there had been great opposition to taking any of that authority away from the states prior to that. But with the meltdown of the state associations, there seemed to be a clear path toward national certification at the baccalaureate level and the master's level. So we spent most of my term focusing on certification, reorganizing the structure of ACYCP, and creating a new organization, which became the Certification Child and Youth Care Workers Certification Board, and which eventually was set up to take charge of certification to allow ACYCP to refocus on other areas of professionalizing the field. We put together the competencies, Martha Mattingly and others put together the competencies for child and youth care work during my term, and that became the basis for us then to design a national certification examination for child and youth care workers, which we spent several years doing. We began to work on validating that examination to research it, to make sure it had some validity. And all of that occurred during those 7 years. By the end of that term, I had changed jobs and moved to another city and found that I did not have the time to continue the leadership, and so I resigned near the end of my second term. The lessons I learned at a professional as well as personal level is that we don't have to wait. One of the biggest lessons is we don't have to wait for somebody else to give us the money or give us the cue or give us some kind of legitimacy to make changes in the world. When we see something that needs to be done, we have a vision of the future, even though it has never existed before. we can create the structures and make that happen if we work together to do that. It takes a group of people that are determined, that are committed, that have a vision for the future, but it can be done. And I was very privileged to work with a group of people like that, a large group of people. You know, we had 25 or 30 people that were very actively engaged in creating the certification system and all of the pieces that went into creating that. And it was just a real privilege and joy to work with all of them in doing the different pieces of that. But we don't have to wait for success. We can create something on our own. It's probably the biggest lesson. At a personal level, I think I learned more about myself. One part is that it's hard for me to turn loose when I feel an obligation and a commitment, and I probably should have turned loose to the process a year earlier, at least a year earlier than I did, because of changes in my personal life. And those are lessons. The future of child and youth care work is important to the United States as well as to the group of us that work in that field. Children and youth are claimed as a group by a lot of different professions, but none of them have the same body of knowledge, the same perspective that we have in child and youth care. That relational aspect of development, the ability to use activities to further the growth and development of children is something unique that I still don't see other professions, surprisingly, don't see other professions adopting to the degree, anywhere near the degree that we do. And I think that's a real gift that we have to society at large, to children, to families. I think we've learned a lot in the past about being family-oriented in our practices, and I think that's a change that I've seen just in my lifetime that is a real big change and needs to continue to be developed. One of the concerns I've had that I've expressed in numerous places is that I think the leadership of the field of child and youth care work has been traditionally pretty middle class and pretty homogeneously Anglo-Saxon, and I think that presents a challenge to see beyond our own prejudices, our own assumptions about people. And I really think we should do more to reach out to organizations that are very actively serving the Hispanic communities in the United States, the Asian American communities, the African and African American, both African immigrant and African American populations. And there are groups that are doing really excellent work with those populations in child and youth care, but they're not really part of our leadership. And I think in ways that we are not aware at all right now, it influences the direction we're taking the organization, taking the field, and probably in some ways that leave out some very important understandings, cultural understandings about what makes families tick, what promotes the growth and development of children. So I feel a concern about that because the change in American society among children and youth is happening right now, and it's accelerating, and we really need to respond to that. That's my biggest concern.